Okay, let me find. For some reason, there was only one attendance sheet, so but it's good for the Amazon rainforest. You can sign on the same page twice today. Maybe I should do that anyway. It will be a better idea. One practical issue now. We've started topic 3, and we've been finishing topic 2 this week. We had our presentations on Monday. Put your hand up if you are definitely or possibly going to write the essay for topic 2. Okay, those of you who did the presentation will obviously be doing topic 2. Everyone's supposed to do topic 1, and we're negotiating that with some of you that haven't kind of done it properly already. So those that did the presentation, for example, Erdem did Marx, then obviously you'll write your second essay for topic 2, okay? Anyone else? And Sibyl, you're here as well. So you're planning as well, okay?
Can I write 2?
Well,
I started it.
right. You have to do topic 1, okay? And you're doing topic 3 presentation. So the problem, you can do it, but it means you do the work for topic 1, because everyone does that. You'll write the essay for topic 2, and you'll do the research for your presentation. Whereas most people, they put the essay and the presentation together. So Erdem definitely will not be writing an essay about topic 3, because he's doing the topic 2 essay, because it was his presentation. So you can do that if you want, Asena. That's fine, but obviously it'll just mean a bit more work for you. Okay?
I started it.
So if you've prepared it and things, then that's fine. You've got the material okay. Okay. So as it says on the back of the topic 2 bibliography, the deadline is, I think, 1 minute to midnight on Sunday. So if you're planning to write the essay, or you definitely are writing the essay for topic 2, you've got the rest of today, Saturday, and all of Sunday, and you need to submit it to Turnitin using the process that some of you successfully used last time to submit it there. Send me an email if there's a problem on Saturday or Sunday morning, and I can try and help or whatever, okay? The essay should be submitted there, and it'll go to topic 2, okay? And I'll be creating the topic 3 one next week for those who will write the essay for topic 3 at the end of the course, okay? So any questions? Is that all clear? Any problems, please let me know. Okay. Here we have a nice picture. Somewhere in, I guess, New York State, as it is now. And I think it's this sort of hill here, which is the important part, I think. Or else maybe they're taking a picture on the hill or something like that. And we'll come back to this hill and this landscape in a few minutes, okay? This is to do with what we call, colloquially, when we speak, we refer to this religion as Mormonism, and we refer to the believers as Mormons. But it's not a nasty way of saying it. It's not fully accurate. Their full name is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay, that's the correct name for this religion. Okay, and we'll explain where the term Mormon comes from in a couple of minutes. And this landscape is very important for these guys. Okay, who are the Mormons? Let's begin like we had before. Well, here are a couple of Mormons. What do you think they're doing? Well, it's obvious what they're doing, but what are they doing? What?
Jesus Christ.
Sorry?
You know, those guys travel all around the country and ask people, did you find Jesus Christ? And they make those propagandas. I think
that's what they're doing, yeah, kind of. They may not call it propaganda in their own view of things, but they are trying to spread the word of their belief, and indirectly at least trying to persuade people that they should join their church, they should become Mormons as well. And it's very common for young people, kind of your age, okay, around about 20 or something, which is why these are youngish guys, to be sent out on these missions, okay. So they are missionaries. They're going out, often leaving their country. When I was a child living in North Wales in Britain, we would have, very occasionally we would have some young American men knocking on the door to sort of talk about their religion, which is what they're doing here. And some other religions do that kind of thing as well. There are some other kind of pseudo-Christian groups that do this kind of thing as well. But this picture I can confirm is definitely a couple of young Mormon men about to speak to someone. I don't know where it might be, that house. It could be in England. Obviously they don't come to Turkey so much. I mean, most of the places that Mormons will focus their missionary activities are going to be Christian countries, because I guess they're already kind of people have got a certain set of ideas which are similar. So that's why most or all of you are not familiar with who the Mormons were, but most people in England will have some idea who they are because of these things. Okay, so who are they apart from being these two young men waiting eagerly by that front door for someone to open up and have a chat? Well, firstly, they are, as we just said, originally an American religion. It's a world religion now. There are Mormons in many parts of the world, okay. But originally it is based in the United States and focused largely in Utah State. And I've got a little map here. It's a historical map, but it tells a little bit. This goes back to the end of the 19th century. And their kind of main city in Utah is Salt Lake City, and we'll say a little bit more about that later on. There are, according to my figures, it's probably more now, since I wrote these down a while ago, probably over 11 million Mormons in the world, okay? And about half of them are based in the US. And the other half live in other parts of the world, Europe, South America, parts of Africa, and the very Far East, where again Christianity is a little bit stronger. As I said, the correct name of this religion is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I think it's from about 1838 that they've had that name. They went through various a number of other names before, but they're most commonly referred to as Mormons. The word Mormon comes from an ancient American Indian, Native American, what they would call prophet. Okay, and I'll say more about him later on. It's a nickname that we use now for all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but the original name comes from a name they have for the guy who supposedly wrote the Book of Mormon with his father. Okay. Their founder, we should add here, in fact, right there, JR. What does JR stand for after a name? Junior. Okay. It's very common in the US to give the same name to the son as to the father. Okay, so presumably Joseph Smith Jr.'s father was also called Joseph, and to make it clear which one you're referring to, they often are JR. So put JR after that. I haven't got that on. The founder, the first Mormon in a sense, and the first president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was Joseph Smith Jr., and we'll say a little bit more about him, okay, in a minute. He claims, the basis of their belief, is that he discovered on golden plates the Book of Mormon, okay, and translated it into English. So what I'm holding in my hand here is some ancient text which he dug up on that hill that we saw in the previous screen, and eventually we'll talk about the process, translated it into English and then published it. Okay, and that's where this particular holy book comes from. And he was there then spreading that religion in the New York State where he lived originally, and so on. So he's their founder, okay, and that's the basis of his claim. For us, we might think a little bit about this question as we go along. Are the Mormons Christians? I don't know if anyone's got an opinion about this now, but members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would say yes. Okay, and their name contains a reference to Jesus Christ. Okay, so they believe in Jesus Christ, not in quite the same Jesus Christ that Christians, other kinds of Christians believe, but they claim to be Christians in that sense. But Catholic, Protestants, Orthodox Christians would have more doubt about this. They would not be so happy perhaps with saying these are Christians. But then of course everyone disagrees. When we had the Reformation, when Protestantism began, okay, Catholics were saying these are terrible people, this is not Christianity, reject that. So it's just a matter of arguing what you believe, I suppose, and having different beliefs and then separating them out. But the question of whether we can call them Christians varies. In their belief they are, and they believe they are the true Christians. They have the true Christian belief in faith and so on. Whereas according to Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox, Greek Orthodox view and so on, their ideas are quite different in some ways from what they believe, so they might say that these people are not really Christian. Okay, we won't answer that question here today because everything can change anyway over time. So, but it's one issue. Some of their ideas are a lot different from what we might call traditional Christianity. Okay, so all that clear. American faith. I haven't indicated as well what we have done, but beginning in the 19th century, okay, so it's just under 200 years old now, just a little bit under 200 years old since things started beginning that developed into the emergence of Mormonism. Okay, here is Joseph Smith Jr. Got the junior there that time, and here are his dates, as you can see. He didn't live to an old life, and we'll explain why in a few minutes. Joseph Smith Jr. Grew up in New York State, what is eastern side of what is now the USA. And obviously he was some kind of Christian. I'm not sure exactly what kind of Christian. There were, in America, many different kinds of new ideas of Christianity were developing in the 18th century and so on, in the 19th century. You're aware of all the kind of evangelical. Do you know what evangelical means? Evangelists. What does that mean? If you call someone an evangelical Christian and so on, you may or may not be aware of that, what it means, but it's a certain kind of approach to religious belief in a sense. And these, well, maybe there may be some conservative ideas, but they're very kind of vocal in the way that they want to promote their ideas. They've got some new ideas, different ideas, but they're very kind of enthusiastic, excited about their religion and things like that. So you get a lot of evangelical preachers on American TV who are shouting and saying, you become this, you become that, and things like that, okay? And I'm sure they have websites and things like that. And that tradition goes back to the 18th and 19th century in America, where they have new ideas emerging as it's a new society and things like that. So he may have been influenced by that kind of context as a background as a young man, okay? Now the story goes, when he was only about 15 years old, around about, and for some reason, I don't know why, but it's never been made clear, but round about, maybe in 1820, maybe a little bit before, he had his first vision, his first seeing of something religious, something new. This is the first thing, okay. He was out near where he lived in the woods, in the trees, praying. Okay, he was praying to God or whatever, so he was a religious young man. And he says, a pillar of light came down from heaven onto him. Okay, light came down from heaven onto him. The heaven opened and light came down onto him, something like that. And two very strong, light, bright figures were there. Okay, one was God, and one was Jesus Christ. Already they're kind of separating these two figures out. Remember, in Christianity, Jesus is God, so they're really part of the same thing. But here, he sees them both separately, God and Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ says to the young Joseph Smith, who's presumably sitting on his knees shaking, thinking what the heck's going on, and says, all the other Christian churches are wrong and corrupt. All the Christians are wrong. All the other ones, the things you've got here in America, if you go all the way back to Italy or whatever, all the Christians are wrong, okay? And ultimately, you're going to be telling people the truth, okay? But the others are wrong. This is the first vision he has. And of course, many prophets have visions. We heard about Guru Nanak being taken up to the court of God. There's usually no extra person who says, oh yes, it was true, I saw it happen, he was over there and the light came down and things, and they're taking notes or whatever. Okay, they only have the young man or lady's account of this, of course. And I'm not saying that just to kind of say, well, it's all a load of rubbish or something, but this is obviously one issue, okay? It's something which they relate and they tell other people. This happened to me, but there's no one else there to kind of confirm or deny the truth of what it is. It's part of this prophetic and revelation tradition, in a sense. So this happens when he's about 15, when he's a young man, 14, 15 or something. A few years later, 1823, specifically now on the 21st of September 1823, okay, an angel visits him. An angel who's called Moroni. Okay, I used to say Moroni, but then I listened on the internet or something and I heard the Americans, they said Moroni, so I realized that's how you pronounce it. Okay. 3 times during the night, this angel visited Joseph Smith as he was in bed or wherever, 3 times, okay, and he says, the angel says to him, in that hill, the hill is called Cumorah Hill, okay, there are golden plates made from gold. So they're kind of big, flat things like that. I'm not sure exactly what they're meant to look like, something like that. And they have writing on them. And they're buried in that hill, he says, okay. And the language is what he calls, no one's ever heard of this language since or before, he says it's written in something called Reformed Egyptian. And Moroni says to Joseph Smith, I want you to go to the hill, take those plates out, and you're going to translate them into English. Okay, that's your kind of job. Okay, this is the beginning of something special. But when he gets to the hill and tries to dig down, he can't get the plates out. And he realizes it's because he's a bad person, because he's not good enough to do that. Okay, morally, ethically, religiously, he's not yet suitable to take the plates out and do the job that the angel says. And the same thing happens every September for the next 5 years. He gets visited by the angel, sent to the hill, and he fails. Except on the 5th attempt to do this, he succeeds. He finally has become a better person. He's understanding the truth, and he can pull out the plates. So September 1827 is when he removes these plates from the ground. Okay. And for the next 2 years, he spends time translating these plates. Somehow he's able to translate Reformed Egyptian into English, okay, with the help of he's presumably had basic... No. I mean, there isn't such a thing, unless you're a Mormon, as Reformed Egyptian. Okay, this is the phrase they use. But there is an Egyptian language, and Coptic, which is used today by Christians in Egypt, is a form of that. No one really understands what this Reformed Egyptian is, some form of Egyptian. But he wasn't a linguist or anything like that. Okay, but again, we'll say a bit more about the plates as we go along. So this is the story. This is the official account. And he has help from a guy called Oliver Cowdery, okay, kind of associate of his, the first Mormon convert, I suppose. Okay, briefly, 1828, they lose some of the translation, and then they have to start again. Okay, and they start back again. I think there's some story also that how it would work, and I'm not sure about this exactly, Smith would sit behind a kind of curtain or something. He'd have the plates here, and then he would shout the translation, and on the other side, Cowdery would be writing it out. So again, we don't really have kind of people, they're experts, looking at the language and things like that. It's all a bit, obviously, uncertain from our perspective or whatever. But that's, this is the story, okay? So for that 2 years, 1827, with a slight problem, they're busy translating the plates. And finally, 1830, they finish the translation, and it's published as the Book of Mormon, okay? At that time as well, 1829 to 1830, Smith and Cowdery start the process of founding their new church. In 1829, it says they are visited by John the Baptist, important figure in Christian tradition. Who is this in Islamic Turkish tradition? Who is John the Baptist? He's cousin of Jesus Christ, okay, remember? Is it Yahya or something? Yeah, okay. You have ideas of him, not quite the same as what Christians have. But in the Bible, in the New Testament, he comes before Jesus. He baptizes. He puts water on Jesus in the river and so on. And he also talks about, after me, someone else will come. Someone will come after me and so on. So he's an important kind of figure in Christian tradition. Exactly where he fitted in historically is perhaps not so clear. So for Smith, they receive a visit from John the Baptist, another important figure, okay, a vision, whatever. And they say, okay, he says, you need to set up a new church. You know that the others are wrong. You're in the process of finding the truth out. You've almost finished that job. Set up a new church, and you two, Joseph and Oliver, will be the first elders, will be the first leaders of that church. Okay, so that's what they start doing, 1829 to 1830. And they originally call themselves the Church of Christ. Okay, they have that name for a few years, and then finally, 1838, it becomes the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For the next 1.5 decades, they are busy spreading their word. They are busy persuading people that their ideas and their holy book is the truth, and they get people who will convert, will join their religion. They send out missions to other parts of America, neighboring states. They also, quite early on, send people to England to try and persuade English people to become Mormons as well. Okay, but they also experience persecution during that time. What does persecution mean? If you persecute someone, anyone know? Sorry? Doesn't have to be killing. It just means something else. It's part of it.
Judge harshly someone.
Yeah, okay, or to treat someone harshly. Okay, usually because of something they're doing or they're believing. If you persecute someone, you're going at some person or a group of people, and you're deliberately being nasty to them, okay? Whether you're speaking nasty or whether you're physically being nasty to them in that sense, for certain reasons as well. There's usually a reason, emotional or ideological. So religions are often persecuted, okay? The Prophet Muhammad had to flee, okay, away. Early Christians were treated nasty by the Romans and things like that. We call that persecution as well, okay? You all know the film Gladiator. The heads chopped off, you know Gladiator? It's quite old now by your standards, but you know, they would often put Christians in the arenas to fight against lions and things like that. That old stereotype and things. Persecuting Christians, let's use those for entertainment and things like that. And it's the same here, because he was coming out with some new ideas. What was being said in here was not exactly what people who believed in evangelical Christianity in New York State believed. And when you believe something, you get angry if someone says, no, you're wrong. Okay, this is the truth. And so it sometimes leads to physical attacks. And in this case, there weren't many of those Mormons, so it became persecution. And the local authorities, the local police, or whatever you want to call it, obviously had a problem. They have to protect people, but they also didn't believe in this stuff, and it maybe have been a bit of a problem. And eventually, they arrested a number of Mormons. Joseph Smith was arrested and put in prison, and while he was in prison, he was assassinated. He was killed, okay, by people who didn't believe in his ideas, who didn't like his ideas. And this is what we call martyrdom. If you are killed because of your belief, or because of what you're doing, then we will call you a martyr in that sense. Okay, so for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, his death was martyrdom. He died for his belief, okay, by a bunch of people who didn't like the Mormons and so on. But he started things off through these series of visions, through the creation of the church, and through publishing the book. He started the religion off. He started things going. Okay, and that's the beginning of their history in that sense. But still focused on America and the more eastern side of America and so on, but beginning to spread. So let's say a bit more about their later history. Let's trace what happens next as we move on. This man has a nice big beard, but no turban, so he's obviously not a Sikh. Okay, different appearance. He is in fact Brigham Young, who was more or less contemporary with Smith and one of the early members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And when Smith was killed, he is succeeded as leader, as president of the church by Brigham Young. Brigham Young becomes the new leader. He's their next leader in that sense, okay. And his main fame, his main role, his most important thing was what we call the Pioneer Trail. That's why I've got these wagons here, taking this probably from the Mormon website, I think, to represent this Pioneer Trail, as they call it. Okay. The Mormons were based or focused at that time at a place called Nauvoo, I don't know exactly how the Americans pronounce that, in what is now Illinois, state of Illinois, okay. But under Brigham Young, they begin to move westwards, okay. Remember, the United States didn't exist as a big country like it is today. It's been slowly taking over territory further north and west as it's developed and so on. And it was during the 19th century a lot of that happened. And so you further west you went, there were not really anyone controlling that area, or it was outside of America. So they decided to gradually move westwards to try and find somewhere away from persecution where they can have a strong base and so on. They cross the Great Plains, okay, over a number of years, and finally they come to what is now their base, as we said, Salt Lake City, okay, here. And at this point, what is now Utah, I don't think was formally part of the US. For the beginning of this process, it was actually outside of the United States of America. It had some connection with it and so on, okay, but it becomes incorporated into the US about a year or so later on. So they get there and they set themselves up, I think, 1847, okay. I've got that here as well, Salt Lake City in Utah, I've put that, okay. And this became the new headquarters of their religion. It becomes the basis for their religion, and it still is today. They're based there, okay. (1848), Utah becomes a territory of the US, and then only in 1890-something, 96, I think, it actually became a state. Okay, so for quite a few decades, they were on the edge of the US. Okay, what's the title of this thing here? They were even thought of themselves as establishing a kind of kingdom Okay, this was their kingdom in a way. So for the second half of the 19th century, they were establishing themselves and then trying to push further westwards as well and make more converts. But they had this special position for a while there. Okay, now Utah is part of the US properly as a normal state, but there are more Mormons living there than elsewhere, I suppose. Okay, but it's a formal part of it. So it's a gradual process. And this process of the pioneer trail moving westwards, this is the main reason for Brigham Young. Okay? And there's a university called Brigham Young University in Salt Lake City in Utah, I think, okay, named after him, whatever, which is obviously primarily a Mormon university. Okay, so that's their history. Joseph Smith sets things up, is the main prophet, their first president, translates the Book of Mormon and has these experiences and visions. He has other visions later on. God, Jesus Christ tell him what to believe and give him ideas. We'll talk about those either later or on Monday next week. And then after him, Brigham Young is the one that moves them over to Utah and starts this big spread westwards. Oh, and here's a nice map. I forgot about this, just showing how they went. When you put it in the context, you can see what an achievement it was at that time. Okay, so we start over here. Okay, in New York State, Fayette area here is where it all begins, and then they've moved slowly with Smith to these areas here, and they're about here when Smith has died, and then the big trail is going in various ways. But eventually the main focus is here. Okay? And then they spread out further west as well, as you can see. So that shows the nature of the achievement. And again, here you can see this is called Mexico. We've got California and other parts of the west of US becoming US at this time, as we said. Okay, let's say a bit about their holy books then. We've mentioned one, but we ought to understand their other holy books, the basis of what they believe today. It's very important for us. Firstly, the Mormons accept the Bible. They consider the Bible to be a holy book. Remember we said last time, the Bible, in fact, Old Testament, New Testament, the Jewish part, the Christian part put together is the Bible. Okay, so they accept that the Bible is the holy book. But they have a qualification, they have another comment. They say the Bible, as far as it is correctly translated. Okay, they say the existing translations, existing versions of the Bible, and for them originally, of course, it meant English versions. They were reading the Bible in English in 19th century New York or whatever. Smith said that the Bible was translated badly. It represents mistakes. And so he's going to correct those mistakes. Now, of course, interestingly enough, Islam has a similar kind of comment. It says God gave the truth, but then people change that, and what we have as the Bible is a slightly incorrect version of what God wanted to give. So it's not quite the same, but it's the same basic idea. Okay, there's some basic truth. The basic thing is fine, but there are some problems. There are things that have been lost, and there are things that have been changed over time. So the Bible we have now is not perfect. Okay, so they have the Joseph Smith translation. Okay, Joseph Smith Terjemesi, I suppose you could also say. They both have got T in them there, if you wanted to use the Turkish word. And this he put together in the early days. Okay, he prepared this. And he says that God told him to do this. God said, look, I've got a bit of a problem. The Bible that all these other Christians are using is actually not quite right, so I'm going to help you to produce the correct version of that. Okay, I'm going to help you produce the true Bible in that sense. And he made some changes to the sentences in English. He didn't know any Greek, he didn't know any ancient Hebrew to look at the Old Testament parts, I don't suppose. And also he adds some new books. Okay, into the New Testament, he added something called the Book of Moses. And then he comes up with his own version of the Gospel of Matthew in the New Testament as well. Okay, so there are some new parts added in. So first holy book for the Mormons is the Bible, but it's this Joseph Smith translation. It's this Joseph Smith version of that, which is what Mormons today will consult and read, which is similar but not exactly the same as what Catholics or Protestants or whatever will be reading in whatever language they may be doing it elsewhere in the world. But we have to be careful because we're going to be going online here. But I mean, it depends on what you say. I mean, he's revising with the help of God the English translation, okay, originally. So it's originally, I suppose, the English version, which then gets edited by Smith. Now, if you're being completely cynical, which is what I would be, because I'm an atheist, you would say, well, he's going through the book and changing the bits that he doesn't like to suit him, okay? But if you are a believing Mormon, then I presume you're saying God was helping him to find the mistakes and to produce a correct version and to add new things in. So it depends on your perspective. Let's say that very carefully, obviously, but that's what's primarily going on. So they have the Bible, but it's the Joseph Smith version, the Joseph Smith translation, however you want to interpret or see that in a sense, okay? And then we've got the Book of Mormon, which is the unique one. They don't share that with anyone else, of course. This is their unique holy book associated with them, okay, which is called Another Gospel of Jesus Christ. It's another gospel. The Gospels in the New Testament we mentioned them the other day without using the word, actually. What are the Gospels? You know, in the New Testament, in the Bible, the Gospels are which parts? Anyone remember? We mentioned them without. It's the lives of Jesus Christ. It's the parts that tell the four different versions of the life of Jesus Christ, including one connected to someone called Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. So they say the Book of Mormon is another gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay, so it's another account of Jesus Christ from a different perspective. Okay, and this is the holy book which he was told about 1823. He finally got hold of 1827. He translated for the next 2 years and he published it 1830. And this is, I mean, my edition is presumably, I don't know how old it is, but essentially, okay, first English edition published in 1830, it says, okay, first issued by whatever publishers, and I think the one I have here is 1920, so it's a fairly old one, but okay, still what we have there is their holy book in that sense. And as we said, it's been translated from these reformed Egyptian plates which he found and dug up, okay, and these plates were written by a guy called Mormon, the ancient American Indian prophet, and his son Moroni. Okay, so it's father and son there. And allegedly, in AD 421, Moroni buried the plates in that hill, and then as an angel he comes back and sees Smith and tells him to go to that hill and find them. Okay, so he's deliberately buried them there in the ground so that someone, Smith, later on, hundreds of years later, will come and dig them up and then spread the truth. Okay, that's their basic idea. Let me summarize some of the main ideas in here now very briefly. We've only got 10 minutes left and we might have to stop a bit early, but I'll say a few things about this. Okay. They say round about 600 BC, back in ancient times, okay, a bunch of ancient Hebrews, a bunch of ancient Israelites, okay, living in what is now Israel, left Jerusalem. Okay, the Babylonians were coming to destroy the kingdom of Israel. This is something we get in the Old Testament. And they get exiled and so on. But some of these people, a guy called Lehi, maybe you pronounce that Lehi, if you're American, I don't know. Lehi and his family decide, with the help of God, to leave and go to a promised land far away, okay? And God helps them build a ship, and they sail to the west coast of America. And do this here. Lehi has two sons that are important, Laman and Nephi. Okay, they are his two sons who joined him. And once they get to America, the children who come after Laman are one kind of group of people or tribe, the Lamanites, and the people who come after Nephi are called Nephites. And together, they equal the ancestors of the American Indians. Okay. The American Indians, the people that Columbus met when he arrived in the Caribbean and so on, are all descended from the Nephites or the Lamanites, they say. Okay. All the American Indians, north and south and elsewhere, are all descended from these Jewish people that came with God's help to America back in the BC time. The problem is the Lamanites and the Nephites were often fighting. They're often disagreeing and arguing with each other, as families do in that sense. Okay. And after Jesus Christ is crucified on the cross, but before he goes up to heaven, in Christian tradition, he dies and eventually is taken up to heaven, of course. But before he does that, he makes a quick visit to America, and he goes to the Lamanites and the Nephites and tells them the truth and says, stop being naughty boys and girls and fighting and be good, okay? And he tells them Christianity. So he brings Christianity to the Americans, in a sense. Later on, the fighting begins again, and eventually the Nephites are destroyed. Okay, the Nephites are all wiped out by the Lamanites, and these guys, Mormon and Moroni, were the last of the Nephites. They were the last people from that family. And so they're desperately writing down the truth on these golden plates to bury them before they die and before the truth can be lost completely, okay? So then they bury them under the ground, and then they come back later. Moroni comes back later to tell Smith what to do, okay? So this is the basic story of their belief, partly set out, not all of it in here, but partly set out in the Book of Mormon, the account of these things. It tells about Jesus coming, it tells them going to America and things like that. So my question to you, let's finish with this question, is what do you think was the reason for the stories, the ideas that I've given here very briefly in this description? Either it's true, if you're a Mormon, of course, if you believe in these things, then it's the truth. If you're not a Mormon, which the majority of people in the world are not, then it's something coming from human beings. This is what we were saying the other day. So, and obviously Joseph Smith, you'd say, this is Joseph Smith is writing all this, if you are not a Mormon yourself. So what would be the reasoning for all of these stories that I've been telling? What do you think is the reason why Smith came up with this stuff, if that's what happened? Any ideas? What was his inspiration? What was his purpose in doing this?
Psychological illness, maybe.
Right, okay, psychological illness or whatever, I mean, okay, but many great prophets have been seen as being mad, I suppose. I mean, that's they have to be different in some way. But the specific ideas in here, why did he have to come up with these things? I mean, everyone's religion is either true or false, and crazy depending on your perspective, but the specific things, where are they coming from, why? He's got Christianity as his background, it's based on that. Yeah, no, we'll come to that later. I mean more the story. I just told this story. Ancient Jews, Lehi and his family, leaving Jerusalem, with God's help, building a ship, sailing all the way to the west coast of America. The Lamanites, the Nephites have become the new tribes. Jesus Christ visits them, and then they carry on fighting and all these things. Is this just fun? Does he want to tell a story, or is there something else perhaps going on, do you think? Well, for us it's a fairy tale. For the 11 million more Mormons out there, of course, it's the truth. So we're not concerned about how we describe it, we're concerned about what's going on in his head. Why did he feel the need to come up with these new ideas and to say it's the true Christianity and that the other churches are wrong? And what's so characteristic of this? What makes it different from what a Catholic or a Protestant or a Jew believe? What are the big differences here in my story that I've told? Tuja? Right, you kind of, yeah, it's not revealed in quite the same way. Think of all the other religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, where do they all begin? Which part of the world do they begin? China, England, Africa? More the Middle East seems to have this tradition for these things, okay? Whether you see it as historical or actual truth, but they all began in a relatively focused part of the world. And obviously this one begins in America, and he gives it an American context, okay? So somehow he wants to Americanize or take over the religious traditions which is in a very distant part of the world for him, in a sense. 1820, very, very early in the history of the USA, okay? We looked at the Declaration of Independence a few weeks ago. That was the beginning of the United States as a separate political entity, breaking away from the British Empire and so on. This is only a few decades later. It's still very early on in the childhood of US. They were still expanding their power and so on. So they probably felt quite nervous, quite excited, and this we could see it as a kind of religious version of that, trying to Americanize Christian tradition, religious tradition, monotheism, and say, well, in fact, we're not just some funny guys miles away from anyone else. Jesus Christ came here. The ancient Jews came here. We're actually just as important as the Middle East in that sense, okay? Some of the other ideas are his more religious ideas rather than the story we'll come to next week. But we could perhaps suggest that Mormonism was this attempt to make more American or Americanize or make relevant to people the religious traditions which are primarily Middle Eastern until that point, in a way, okay? So that's why Jesus comes to America. That's why the Jews go to America and things like that. And that's primarily, I think, what members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints still believe today. They believe these things, okay? That's the truth. Okay, let's have a break. Another break. You get you all nervous then. Let's finish there. So topic 2 essays submitted to turn it in by midnight or 1 minute before midnight or something on Sunday. Okay, any problems, let me know. Otherwise, we shall see each other again.
Time regional turn it in. I mean, we are living in GMT 2 plus. Is it American time or British time?
Good point. Very good point. Yeah, but I mean, you should all be in bed at midnight anyway, having a good night's sleep, okay? You shouldn't be working at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's a bad thing. You've left it till the last minute, then that's obviously bad. So, yeah, to be sensible, submit your essays by 9 o'clock on Sunday. And if there is a problem, we can find some kind of solution, okay? Sibel, you had a problem last time. You gave me your file. I can upload it onto the system, but I prefer you to do that rather than me to have to upload each one. But try and get them done by kind of Sunday evening, let's say that. Okay, you could do it later, but I think it might work on local time as well. We'll see. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice weekend.